Hello everyone. It's me, Arden Lee. I am back today with another video, and in today's video, I want to talk about seasonal affective disorder, otherwise known as SAD, which has to be one of the most apropos acronyms of all time. This is a pretty topical video for right now because as I'm filming this, we are in the month of December, and I have noticed both in myself as well as many other people around me, that they are feeling some of the effects of that darkness, that gravity, and that slowdown. That feels like that kind of molasses, that makes it so difficult at times like this to maintain our inspiration, our momentum going forward. And so I want to talk a little bit about what seasonal affective disorder is. I want to unpack some of my thoughts around it based on my perception and my experience of it. And I want to talk a little bit about some ways that we can cope with it and handle it so that it doesn't feel so upsetting or so crippling, that we can maintain an understanding and a conscious awareness that this is just a pattern that will pass, and how we can set ourselves up for success during that time so that when we do reach that turnaround in the new year, when things start to get brighter again, both in terms of our sunlight that we're exposed to, and also in terms of our own cheerful dispositions, that we don't feel like we've lost too much in those months that are behind us. So let's talk about how to maintain our own sanity, our own wellness during those months if we are affected by seasonal affective disorder, and what we can do. So before I get into that, of course, I would love to invite you to subscribe to my channel. If you are interested in learning tips and tricks to be able to hack your beliefs and reframe your perspectives in order to create more and more space in your life for receiving happiness, abundance, and success, and being able to navigate things such as the autumnal months and the winter months with more ease and more flow and more conscious awareness of how things are going down and how to best cope with them, then this channel might be right up your alley, because that's what I love to talk about. So go ahead and hit the subscribe button if that sounds like you, and let me know. Let me know in the comments how these talks are hitting you. Let me know if there's something that in particular that you would like to see me present on, and let's stay connected. So, all right, so let's talk a little bit about seasonal affective disorder. What is seasonal affective disorder? Well, when you look it up on the internet and you look for the official definition, what it says is that it is a temporary bout of depression that is typically associated with the autumn and winter months, and in large part, at least, attributed to a lack of sunlight, right? Part of how we maintain our wellness in the body, that the animal that is our body, that we've anchored our spirits into these physical bodies that need certain forms of nourishment, and sunlight is certainly one of them. So when we approach the winter months and we have more of a lack of sunlight, that can affect us, that can affect our bodies, and in turn it can also affect our moods, our minds. So I've always thought it was kind of ironic that when we reach like, who came up with this? Like, when we reach daylight saving time in which apparently I learned also by Googling today, apparently it's not daylight savings time, it's daylight saving time, because we are saving daylight. So I know that sounded silly, but I just read it and I decided to, say it what is apparently the accurate way. I don't know though. Maybe let's let the people speak on that one. Fuck it. Daylight savings time. When we reach daylight savings time on what is typically, I believe, the second Sunday of November, we actually turn our clocks back, right? We fall back. We spring ahead and fall back. And falling back with our clocks, setting our clocks back an hour, actually means that that the sunset happens even earlier. So even though we may have extra time in the mornings of having more sunlight, we rob ourselves of that time in the evening, and it gets to that point where we're like, wow, sunset's happening at like 5:30, 5 o'clock. Wow, why is it 4 o'clock and all of a sudden it's dark out? Because it continues to get darker and darker, earlier and earlier, until we hit what I believe is the winter solstice, which happens, typically just before Christmas, and then we start getting more and more light back into our day again. So I've always thought it was kind of funny. I'm like, who invented this whole daylight savings time thing where where apparently we want the sun to set earlier when it's fall. That doesn't make sense to me whatsoever. Maybe there's an explanation for that. If anyone knows one, that actually like makes sense, feel free to leave it for me in the comments and educate me. But I've always found that to be kind of weird and ironic that we do that. That as we're approaching these autumnal months, we willingly set our clocks back so that we're like, oh yeah, let's make sure we have even less sunlight at the end of our day. I don't really know why we do that. But that does affect us, and it does affect our mood. And unfortunately, since everyone else is setting their clocks back, I don't think we can really very well protest and just decide to to have our day whenever we want it. There's a certain amount of conformity that we need to do in order to fit into society. So be it. The sunset is going to be a little earlier and earlier as we approach the winter solstice. And we're left in this kind of, and it's not just that, it's partly that, but I also believe that our natural cycle, like you guys, you have to remember, we didn't evolve biologically to exist in the society that we exist in now. We have advanced socially and technologically far faster than we have advanced biologically, with our own bodies, and that's why we have trends like biohacking and all that kind of jazz, because we're kind of we're looking to get our bodies to sort of catch up to where we are. Even I take a supplement called Qualia that my friend Daniel Schmachtenberger, who's a really amazing philosopher, is on their R&D board, and even I use supplements to be able to to better my focus and and increase my ability to be present and to stay cheerful and all that stuff. So even I'm like, I'm not dissing biohacking by any stretch of the imagination. It's just something that we're starting to come up with as humans, to start coping with the fact that our society doesn't really exist in a way that is congruent with the way that we were necessarily that we have necessarily evolved to live. So one of my theories about seasonal affective disorder is actually I think it's an evolutionary kind of coping mechanism that we just haven't shed yet, because in the days when we were hunter-gatherers, or we were even farmers, even in the agricultural revolution, we would harvest things in the fall, right? It's kind of like the ant and the grasshopper. We would like work all throughout spring and summer, and then we'd harvest in the fall, and we'd hibernate for winter. And I really believe that in many ways our bodies are still programmed to do that. Only now we live in a capitalist society where we are expected to work year round. And I'm pretty sure that it was the Industrial Revolution that made that change. That's me kind of zooming out and looking at the overall patterns. Maybe there's a historian out there who can give me some more specifically accurate take on that. But my theory around this is actually that seasonal affective disorder it's kind of funny calling it a disorder, because I think it's actually it's in alignment with what we are with how we have evolved to be as human animals, as humans who exist. Our conscious minds exist in these bodies that are still very much programmed by our biology, and that when this time of year comes around, we are so used to collectively going into a sort of hibernation, going into like, okay, this is winter, this is now when we rest and we wait for things to be reborn again. That is the natural cycle of things. I think if anything, capitalism is a disorder, because that's the thing that says no, we want you to be more productive, we want to advance things forward, we want to make more and more money. That means you must be productive throughout the entire year. So I think that calling, even though seasonal affective disorder is a very, very real experience, I think that calling it disorder is a bit of a misnomer, if we're being honest about that. So I want to point that out first of all. And I want to say that if this is something that you go through, I really think there's nothing wrong with you for experiencing it. And it's not, you're not wrong or broken. You're actually just doing what your body is kind of telling you to do. And unfortunately, we live in a society that is not congruent with those biological impulses, in my educated opinion. So, so that's first of all. Second of all, We also have the holidays, and the holidays are traditionally, notorious for bringing up stress around, seeing our families, all our old familial wounds coming up. If we're going to spend holidays with our parents or our families who may trigger us in certain ways, who may still treat us like we're children, who may bring up all of our old childhood traumas and childhood patterns that can be extremely stressful on our bodies as well. We also feel that desire to nest as well. Like that hibernation impulse is the same thing that makes this, notorious for being cuffing season or whatever. And so if you're a single person and you don't have someone to bring home with you during the holidays, like that's where that like intersects right there. Like you want to be nesting. First of all, your body is saying like, I want a partner. I want to just be cozy by the fireplace. And I don't have one right now, if you don't have one. And then that's compounded by also intersecting with the fact that you're going to be seeing your family, and are they going to be bugging you about the fact that you still don't have a partner or whatever, or like whatever. All of those stresses, conflate together. And at the same time, here we are trying to be productive in a capitalist society, and yet there is such a lack of productivity that happens between the holidays, because between Christmas and New Year's we have this great big slowdown, and it almost feels like any work that we're going to be doing in December is just kind of like what are we even doing it for? We're about to take this huge break, we're about to lose momentum, and like what are we even doing? So it just feels like, man, until the new year there's like not even any point, right? So what I want to point out about this, because I've been dealing with this myself, especially in the last week or so, is that here I am, we've got like what, 2 weeks till Christmas now, it feels like. Is that, yeah, I think it's 2 weeks exactly from the day that I'm recording this video. And it's just like, what am I doing this for? What am I supposed to do? Like, I don't really believe that I'm gonna make a whole big, ton of progress between now and Christmas. And then what do I even do between Christmas and New Year's? How do I keep that up? And like, what kind of work am I even supposed to get done? I actually just sent my business coach a text today about that. I was like, I'll defer to the expert. I'm like, tell me how to handle the holidays. Like, should I be doing the same content that I always do? Should I be taking a break? Should I be like, whatever, so some of that confusion I have outsourced. That's why we outsource things. That's why we hire professionals, so that we can have guidance on what to do, so we don't have to handle all of those decisions all by ourselves all the time. And we can hand that off to someone who already has that experience and knows better. In fact, I'm pretty sure he texted me while I was recording this, so I'll see what he has to say as soon as this video is done. But on top of that, of course, it's hard to keep up momentum with all of this slowdown. Like I said, there is darkness, there is this weight, this gravity, this heaviness that comes around in this part of the year, and also these expectations around the holidays, where it's like, we're kind of expected to divert more of our attention to our families and to our loved ones, which is really, really wonderful, by the way. And that's absolutely one of the ways that I cope with this season, is that, I get really into the Christmas spirit. I love to bake Christmas cookies. I love to be super festive because it makes me happy. And connecting with my loved ones is a way to, to stay positive and stay grounded and stay happy and stay in that vibration of love and positivity during this time of year. So absolutely there's that. But also when it comes to our work, we can sometimes feel like we're pulled away, or like our work, becomes not as important anymore. And what I want to emphasize about this is that when I was, say, 19 or 20 maybe, is when I started to really first notice the fact that I was affected by the change in seasons. I was like, wow, I always tend to get depressed this time of year. But then by the time January rolls around, when it's New Year's, and especially my birthday, which is at the end of January, I feel this new burst of creativity and momentum. The thing is, I never really made the connection to kind of zoom out and see that overall pattern and be able to use that to anchor into that as a means of maintaining momentum during this particular month. I was like, oh, it's this time of year again, it sucks, and I'm just gonna have to wait it out until January or whatever. And this year, for the first time, I'm really being very diligent about sticking to a schedule, and really being diligent about about my work, about the content I'm creating, about the business that I'm building. So for the first time, I was like, maybe the answer isn't to just slow down during this season, because I actually still have to stay very present in many ways, because there's things that I'm doing in January that I really want to set myself up for success for when they get here. And I know that if I look back at this month, once I cross that bridge, I'm like, I already know that when January comes, I'm gonna feel amazing. I'm gonna feel great. I'm gonna feel super inspired. I'm gonna feel super motivated. I'm gonna have had my rest, my Christmas time with my family. I'm gonna have, probably gotten a bunch of gifts that are gonna, inspire me to tackle new projects in the new year. Usually my family knows I love to cook, so they get me a lot of like cooking and baking equipment and stuff. Like, 2 years ago I got a KitchenAid, so I could make my cookie dough without having to like hand beat it or whatever. So even if it's just like, oh, I got some new things to play with, or whatever, I have some things now to inspire me to tackle new projects. Even if they're not even related to my work, it still causes that spark of inspiration in me that makes me feel like I'm more on fire. And then that crosses over into other things too. That feeling can apply to more than one project. So it's about harnessing that energy. And if I know that I'm going to get that energy to harness in January, then I know that when January comes, I'm essentially going to turn around. My future self is going to turn around and look back at this month and be like, wow, what was all the fuss for? Like, why were you so upset and lethargic? Like, what's the big deal? Everything is actually fine. You're just dealing with a lack of sunlight. So I started to think about, like, okay, so maybe this is not the time of year that I do like a great big launch or something like that. Or maybe, yeah, no one's paying attention to anything anyway. Everyone's like thinking about their holidays, like what am I really going to birth into the world at this time? So I'm really starting to think about like just what work do I need to do to set myself up for success in January. All right, well, I want to keep making making my videos and everything. I want to keep I want to start really letting people know about what I'm going to be doing in January and the projects that I'm going to be launching then. I've got a really great New Year's workshop coming up with my friends Aura North and Jamie Lee Finch that is called, we're doing it on January 6th, so we're going to call it the Feast of Your Epiphanies, and it's a one-day online workshop. You can find details if you find my Facebook or whatever. I'm going to be posting a lot about it in the coming weeks. So I'm like, what kind of work can I do on that to like set myself up for success when January gets here, so that then when it's January and I feel super inspired, I can make sure that past me has built all the things that needed to be built for January me to step up and be able to speak and have that platform and have all of that kind of behind the scenes work done already. That sort of initial promotions or putting up Eventbrite invitations or starting to let people know about what I'm planning to do. So in times that it's difficult to stay motivated, just elevating your consciousness to be able to look at the overall pattern and saying, this is what I need to set myself up for in the future. How do I best do that? And how can I do that even from this place where I may be feeling more tired or feeling more depressed or feeling unmotivated? And it's essentially just like, let me just give my body what it needs. Like, let me just rest. I understand that, this is a heavier time than normal to get through. So I'm just going to give myself permission to take things a little more slowly, but also to still do the work that I'm doing. And so what I want to emphasize about this is that, healing your trauma and gaining awareness of your patterns, it's not always going to mean that you feel 100% all the time, because we do go through these cycles. We go through seasonal cycles. We go through cycles in our lives. We go through events in our lives that come along and change things. And it's not that everything is always going to be smooth sailing all the time. But the difference is, if we use the sailing metaphor, you are going to be a more competent and more capable captain of your own ship, so that even when the seas do get stormy, even when it gets darker earlier and earlier every day, you're like, I got this. I know what this is, and I know how to use this time to set myself up for success in the future. I'm not going to let these stories that I have and this darkness and this gravity that happens around this time of year, I'm not going to let it consume me. I'm not going to let it just have me curled up in a snuggie on the couch, watching Netflix all day. I'm going to make sure that I do that in like the last 2 or 3 hours of the day after I've done my work. Because my body is still calling out for that. Like my body still wants to like wrap up in a blanket and just watch, all the Christmas movies on Netflix. But I'm going to be like, okay, I'm going to listen to that. But I'm also going to make sure that I'm doing everything that I need to do to set myself up for success in the future. And it's really just that difference in mindful awareness and just knowing that, like, okay, this is a thing and it's happening, but there's a reason that it's happening, and I don't need to let it consume me, and I don't need to let any of my stories around it or any of the feelings of just like I'm actually not feeling hopeless. I'm not feeling despair. I'm just feeling this kind of like uncomfortable void where I'm just like, ugh, there's gonna be no forward movement till next month anyway. So what's even the point, right? But the point is that I'm actually just setting myself up for success next month. So that's how I would really like you guys to look at seasonal affective disorder. First of all, don't think that there's anything wrong with you or anything broken that's happening just because you feel depressed around this time of year. You know what? It's quite natural, and chances are you're actually like more in tune with your body's wisdom by the fact that you feel affected by this, than if you don't. That's just a theory of mine, but I think it's true. So so don't beat yourself up if it is something that you feel, and just try to use it. Try to just ride the waves out, and don't let it take you over. Don't let it override your good judgment about how you're choosing to spend your time, and how you are maintaining your momentum for everything that you want to get done in life. And all of your goals that you're going to have for the new year going forward. And it took me a long time between noticing that pattern when I was, in my late teens, early 20s, and actually being able to harness that energy and to work in my own good interest, and rather than just kind of caving to it and just, being in it rather than seeing the pattern for what it is. So hopefully this was helpful to you, and good luck getting through the rest of the season, and I'll see you in the next video.